Hello! How are we all doing? Hopefully you can hear me. Fingers crossed, eh? But time will tell. Michael let me know eventually. Right, hello Jonathan, hello Debbie, hello Renee. Good grief, you were in early. Let me keep going.
Yes, you're live.
Hello Kim. And who else have we got? We've got Alex, hello. I hope I don't miss anybody. Mind you, anything could happen.
Sarah's in.
Sarah's in, yay, hello Sarah. How's the first week gone? I'm loving all the speculation that is not helping. Hello, Graham. Hello, Paul. I think I'm up to date. But, like I say, time will tell. Oh, it's been one of those weeks. So, shall we get on with it? I think, I've arranged this in such a way that I can just carry on, which would be amazing, wouldn't it? Although we have had one slight calamity, haven't we? When the screen went weird.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and if you just take the slide back and then go forward, then it's fine. But I've also had all my buttons disappearing in PowerPoint this week, so it's been one of those weeks. Not been the best week, but never mind. Let's get on with it. It's the last one of British summertime today, but more on that later. Right, are we moving or are we just thinking about moving? Hard to tell. Don't go funny on me. Don't do that.
Sarah says it's been amazing.
Oh, good, fantastic. Right, as you can see, somewhat curtailed tonight, and yes, there's not much of me, is there? But then a little bit of me goes a long way. All will be revealed later, but I will endeavour to do as much as I possibly can. We are broadcasting in 1080p. Make sure that you are receiving in 1080p. I haven't had chance to do anything on YouTube this week, so YouTube did nothing to me this week apart from have a backlog of videos I'd like to watch that I haven't got round to. But make sure that you are watching in 1080p, and while you're down there is the thumbs up. You could give us a thumbs up this week and that might make me feel better. There you go. There's emotional blackmail if ever there was. But it did actually start to be an interesting week, didn't it? At the beginning of the week anyway. Because last Saturday, the day after the last show, was the morning after the night before. If you recall, we launched Chicken Cam. Went down really well, that. Better than us, I think. Loved it. And then we did 8 shows on Saturday. No, I don't know how either. But on Saturday night, 8 o'clock, we went into Brooklyn's by request, where it was 70s night. Oh, did we have some fun with 70s night. Way more than I thought. I thought I was an 80s girl. But I enjoyed the 70s.
I enjoyed 70s.
And, much more important than the 70s, oh yeah, we had a studio guest. Chicken made an appearance on the show. And then Mike got grumpy because the food arrived. And the nasty man did not help Mike with it. Let's just say our delivery driver was not this delivery driver, who is Asda delivery driver Paul, who delivered in the snow in January 2021. Unlike this superstar Asda delivery driver, who went viral with this photo showing him walking half a mile to make the delivery from his van in the middle of a snowstorm in COVID lockdown, Mike's idiot driver stood back and watched as he left Mike to unpack all the crates. 20 minutes later, I thought I'll be doing the entire show on my own. So yeah, Asda driver could have been better. Which took us on to Sunday when we realised, well, at least we'd ordered from Asda. Because if we'd done the Tesco thing, that would have been even worse. Because their website broke and orders that had been made weren't being delivered. And other things, they were only delivering like 2 items. So we did well that it was Asda, because at least the stuff arrived, even if it took like the best part of half an hour to get it empty. But that was only the start of the joy of Sunday. Lola's perilous walks continue apace. This time she was up by the canal. Isn't it lovely? By the canal. But for once, Lola was completely innocent in all of this. She was just a bystander. It was Louis the Labrador, who had escaped from his owner and run right across the park to dive headfirst into the canal. He vaulted the miniature railway and dived in head first, which would have been fine if he'd proved himself as adept at exiting the canal as he had been at diving in. Sadly, not. He needed to be rescued Now, obviously, Mike was in charge of Lola. So Mike summoned assistance from Louis' human and another willing victim. And between them, they did manage to manhandle Louis from the murky depths. And while all this was going on, Princess Lola was watching from the relative safety of the dry bank. But she's still claiming it to be her Baywatch moment. She was dry as anything when she came back. Louis, not quite so much. So, at that point, knowing that we were facing some jeopardy of our own later in the day, we decided we would partake of a full English breakfast. It was required. Before Mike and I tackled our biggest and potentially most dangerous job of the month. YouTube two-factor authentication. Oh, it was agonising. The full story will be on the next MacBites, which obviously should have been out by now, but never mind, it'll be on the next one. It was an enforced two-factor, and you're not just two-factoring YouTube, you're two-factoring Google as well. So obviously they have to make sure that you know what you're doing. They let me know all right, again and again and again. It took over an hour and about 3,000 confirmations later, but it was done. I would say I'll recover eventually, but maybe that's what started all this. But as if that wasn't enough, oh no, the day continued very perilous because we went into the Premier League. We didn't think it was going to end well.
Peter says there was no Sunday.
Yeah, Sunday didn't happen, did it not? No, this was the problem. We did finish the two-factor just in time for the match. So, a nice relaxing afternoon, not. But Mike took the opportunity to hone his Affinity designer skills during the match. Obviously driven by this button that said continue watching. But if you notice, they're only 43 minutes in and they're 3-0 down. So he decided, no, he didn't want to carry on watching. Did stagger to half-time at 3-0, didn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, very well done.
I can't remember.
Anyway, he made this all by himself.
If you had been totally incapacitated and not been able to do the meet week at MacBites headquarters,
you'd have got away with that.
I was actually going to miss out Sunday. Peter would have understood. No. Yeah, it didn't end well, did it? But then were bad words said. Oh, look who's turned up.
Oh, it's Carl. I did think of Carl.
There's only one reason Carl's coming today, isn't there?
Carl's a Liverpool fan.
Yeah, I've been suffering all these jibes all week on Facebook. Anyway, seriously, good to see you, Carl.
Anyway, were bad words said? Oh, they were. And misery loves company. So, yes, Peter was just as peeved as Mike was. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Not good. Actually, Peter was ahead of you, wasn't he? Have you run out of bad words yet? Anyway, by the time the final whistle went, and we were all begging for mercy, it finished 5-0. So if you didn't know, it finished 5-0. Do you know the bit of that I thought was shocking, Mike? Worse than the score as far as I was concerned. The red card and the 6 yellow cards. Because I go with the Brian Clough School of Football. Rule 1, don't argue with the ref. Rule 2, see Rule 1. Simple as. So that was appalling. Anyway, while Mike skulked off to bed, I headed into book club, where we're now in the middle of both books, just for the giggles. And it was 2 hours 42 minutes, which wasn't at all bad, was it? We have been 5.5 hours, so it wasn't bad. Now, on Monday, despite the fact we already did this last week, we're doing it again, we had a MacBites birthday. Oh, we did. It was Jonathan's birthday. So I hope you had a fabulous, fabulous day, Jonathan. We decided, Jonathan's birthday, and a new birth, Monterey, or as we call it, the Full Monty. Did we do the Full Monty? Oh, we did. We did, and we live to tell the tale. I can't say everything's working, because by this stage, I was going downhill in the week. But I did manage on Tuesday. It was after Tuesday, wasn't it? I did manage my book club on Tuesday. Ended up running the session, don't know how that happened. And took an extra hour session afterwards as well, because it was only an hour and 4 minutes. Clearly something wrong with that one. But by Wednesday, I don't know if you're still doing the count. I'm still doing the count. Jonathan had a lovely day. Good. Glad you enjoyed it, Jonathan. By Wednesday, I'm still doing the count. And on Wednesday, drum roll, please, we've been in lockdown for 600 days. Maybe, given what's coming up next, somebody else has been in lockdown for 600 days and they were desperate to get out of lockdown because as our intrepid duo headed off for yet another walk, something had gone on. Lola said, let's get closer and let's find out because, there's a bus stuck there and everything. Oh, it's amazing. This is what's going on. As they got a little bit closer, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. It was clear somebody had tried to park. Not very well. How does that happen on a straight road?
I don't know.
No, that's not the first time it's happened round here. And you just think, how? What speed were you going and how? But anyway, yeah, that was the main road. So they shut the main road off. It was a different main road than last week, but, same principle. Living here. It's not surprising I'm not well. Right, which took us to Thursday. Oh, dear. This time, Lola wasn't totally innocent. No. It was Lola's roadkill calamities, and oh dear, and I've spelt that wrong, but never mind. And they continued. Yes, this time it was a squirrel that Lola spotted from about half a mile away. When the intrepid pair got close enough to work out what it actually was, it certainly didn't look as chipper as this fine specimen. In fact, Mike's decided, in addition to poo bags, he needs to take sick bags with him. It was in that much of a state. You really shouldn't let her get that close.
No.
Then in the evening, we had the joy of the Apple quarterly earnings call. Shall I summarise it for you?
Go on.
Made a bucket full of money. Move along. Nothing to say. Which takes us to Friday. And we have another MacBites birthday. Oh, we do. It's Tony's birthday today. So happy birthday to Tony. I don't know if he's with us or if he's enjoying himself, but either way. Peter wants to know, are you not logged into the chat, Mike?
Yes, I'm just replying.
He is.
Yes. I just chose not to rise to the Liverpool bait from Carl.
Do you know, he had a colleague at work this week who left it till Tuesday to gloat. That's restraint right there.
Well, that's because she was off on Monday.
There's me thinking she'd been very, very
But
restrained.
she did leave it till 9:30.
That's jolly good.
Yeah.
Anyway, then there's somebody has been ordered bed rest, and that would be me. So that's why I haven't had that much time to put stuff together this week. And it would have been fine if it was like that, with Lola under a blanket. But sadly, it was more that. So I'm going to hand the reins over to Mike, and you're going to do the numbers thing first, aren't you?
I'm going to do the numbers thing first. I need to press record first.
So the numbers thing is we're part way through a series on numbers and their addition of pivot tables. So we've looked at, I did the first one, and we looked at radar charts, and then we looked at pivot tables, the basics, and then Mike took over so we can get beyond these basics into how advanced it can be. And there's been interesting words said while he's been prepping this week, because it doesn't work the same way as Excel does it?
Interesting and bad.
Interestingly bad. Let's leave it like that. Right, let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready. I've pressed record and I'm ready.
Right, okay. There you are. Let's switch to you and away you go.
Right, okay. So, numbers, pivot tables. We did the basics last week, so I showed you how to add pivot tables. You can either add a pivot table onto the same sheet as the data, or you can add a pivot table onto a new sheet. And if you select the whole pivot table by clicking on that icon in the top corner, you can cut and paste it. And you can also move it around because, as Elaine said a couple of weeks ago, when we did this kind of introduction and overview of numbers, it's a blank canvas. It's not like Excel where you are constrained by rows and columns, or one complete block of rows and columns. It's a blank canvas and you can have multiple tables. So literally you can position them as close or as far away from the data as you like. That is one nice thing that I do like about numbers, is that feature. Anyway, what I didn't show you last week was the refresh option. So when the data changes, all you have to do is click into the pivot table, make sure this panel on the right hand side is visible, and if it isn't, just click the organize button at the top right, and then click the refresh button, which is up here. And it does actually tell you when the pivot table was last refreshed. So as I've just clicked it now, it's got last refreshed date and time, which I think is pretty good. What it doesn't have, what it does lack, and I'm sure they'll add this in the future, because this is of course version 1 of pivot tables in Numbers, it doesn't have a refresh all, which is a bit of a pain if you've got loads of pivot tables, because then you're going to have to go to each pivot table and hit refresh. One thing that you don't have to do, and I know I spent an entire session on this with Excel, and I think I mentioned this last week, is you don't actually have to define the range as being a table and then associate the pivot table with being a table, because it's automatically, the raw data is automatically in a table. And what that means is if you added new data, it will automatically include that new data in the pivot table. You still have to hit refresh, but you don't have to resize the you don't have to change the range. You just hit refresh and that's it. So if we're scoring points, that's I guess that's a point to Numbers. Oh what?
I knew I'd get you there in the end.
No, I just said that's a point to Numbers. So Numbers is 2-0 up at the moment, but I'm sure I can find plenty for Excel to come back with. Call it a comeback, not something United were good at this week. Anyway, something else that I discovered when I was playing around with this is that if you click anywhere at all in a pivot table and click on the edit menu, you've got something there called copy snapshot. You only get it when you're in a pivot table, so it's not there when you're in normal data. When you're in a pivot table, edit copy snapshot, and then you click somewhere else, could be on a different sheet, could be on the same sheet, and you just paste. I'll do Command V, and what you get is what looks like a copy of the pivot table. But when you actually click into this pivot table, it is not a pivot table. This is not a pivot table. If I look if I click on the organize button there, which I don't actually need to, because all that does is it hides and displays that panel. So as long as that panel's visible, we don't actually have a tab up here that's got pivot options. But if I click into this, we do pivot options. So this, in a way, it's like a screenshot. The benefit of doing that is if you actually wanted that to be, well, I was going to say snapshot, because that's what it is. If you wanted a snapshot of the data as at a certain date, a certain time, then instead of having to take a screenshot of that, you can just click into the pivot table, edit copy snapshot, and paste it. Now, Excel does have a similar thing. It has a camera tool. Works in a slightly different way, but the camera tool is dynamic. So what is actually generated is live linked to the original data. So I did say I wasn't going to play Excel versus Numbers, but seeing as I started,
you can't help yourself.
I can't help myself. So yeah, that's pulled one back. Something United couldn't do on Sunday.
Let it go, Mike. Let it go.
You've started me off now, Carl. Do you think I can't see the chat? I'm just wondering if Carl and Peter are scrapping.
No, they're being good.
Hopefully they're listening to me. Anyway, if I want to delete that, I'll just click on it. The other thing you'll notice is that when I click into this data, you've got this symbol, which is the pivot table symbol. So it's a table with two little arrows on it. Whereas if you click in this one, it's just a circle. So that is a static table. Like this one, this is a static table. If I want to delete that, just click on the icon and press the delete key. Okay, so that's the refresh and the copy snapshot. I'm just going to switch over to the chat just to see if there's anything there. No, there isn't. They're all wishing you better, which is good. Okay, so let's get back to this. Right, the next thing to show you is sorting. So I'll use this pivot table here, save me creating another one for the moment. But I actually want to have the product names as the row headings. So I'm going to drag country sold to out and drag product in. So that's what I want to see. I want to see the revenue per product. If I want to sort this by revenue, because by default it is sorted by the first column, what I will do is right click anywhere in that revenue column, and I should see, there we go, sort by revenue sum. That's the name of the column. So sort by revenue sum, and I can do it ascending, so it's lowest to highest, or I can do it descending, so it's highest to lowest. So you can do that with any column. If I right click in the product column, I get sort product ascending, sort product descending. So because it's the column that's got the row titles, it's slightly different. It's the same options, it's just that it's on one menu, whereas this, you have to go to sort values and then choose that. And you can do that with any column. So if I had another column, let's say I had country sold to, it defaults to account because country sold to is text. I can right click on there, sort values, let's do that descending. Okay, so you can sort just like you can in Excel. Very, very similar way of doing it. So let's drag that out. Okay, so that is sorting. The next thing that I will go on to is filtering. So let's say I wanted to only see the revenue per product. Now I've got the revenue per product, but I'm only interested in jackets and suits. Okay, the expensive stuff. Although it looks like skirts have generated quite a lot of revenue as well. But primarily jackets and suits, those are our high revenue products.
Big girls' blouses are in at United, you know.
Are they?
Just saying.
Isn't that a little bit sexist?
Yep, but I'm a girl, so I can say it.
Oh, okay. Right, okay.
You've lost your track now, haven't you?
I've lost my train of thought.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Right. So whose side are you on, mine or Carl's?
Oh, I just find it hysterically funny.
Right, so I want to see revenue for jackets and suits. So what I will do is I will go to the filter options over here. So just click filter. Literally, you've got pivot table options and you've got filter up here. So as long as that panel is visible, go to filter. Once you've done that, go to add a filter. In fact, no, I'm going to show you a different way of doing this. Add a filter, and hang on a minute. No, let's do this again. Start in product and then add a filter. Go to product. That's better. And then you can just take the ticks out of what you don't want to see. So I'll do that again because my partner in crime put me off.
Okay. You see what happens when I've got nothing to do?
Yeah.
I start making mischief.
Yeah. Now there's actually a quicker way. That's actually what I wanted to show you. So instead of that panel being visible, if I just right click on one of these product names, there's a quick filter option. So quick filter on product. If I right click on one of these numbers, then there isn't a quick filter. So you can only quick filter on the row headings or the column headings. And I haven't got any column headings in this one. So right click, quick filter, and then you just deselect the ones that you don't want to see. So the quickest way here actually is just to deselect all and then select jacket and suit. And there we go. So that is showing us the total revenue for jackets and total revenue for suits. And if I want to clear that, I can just right click, quick filter, and select all. And click away to clear that dialog box. So that's one filter. There's quite a few things I want to show you in filters. And this is where interesting words were said the other day. I'll just point one or two things out when we get to them. But let's say I want now to look at revenue per product just for Q1. So Q1 being January, February and March. And you'll notice that I've got a month name column which has got January, February, March, April, May, I think we go down to. Yeah. Okay. So I want to see all the products, all the revenues, but I'm only interested in January, February, March. So first of all, I'll bring up the Organize panel and make sure I've clicked Filter, make sure Filter is active, and then click Add a Filter, Month Name, and just select the ones I want. So keep January, February, March in, clear April and May. Because those, by the way, those are text entries, they're not actually being treated as proper dates, and that's why they're listed alphabetical and not chronological. Okay, so now the numbers have changed. You haven't seen a reduction in the number of rows because we want to see all the products. We could filter on the products as well. You know, I could add another filter and add a filter by product and say just show me those products, but what we're actually interested in is the fact that it is the revenue for each product just for the first 3 months of the year. So I did that by having a filter to hide April and May, as you can see there. Okay, so what I now want to see is revenue per product, which I've got, for January, February, March, which I've got because I'm hiding April and May, but I want to limit it even further, and I want to only see it for China and Japan. So I go to Add a Filter and select Country Sold To, and then only select China and Japan. You do have to have the panel visible to be able to actually see what filters are applied. Otherwise, when you look at the data, you can't see which filters are applied, which is exactly the same as Excel. So we'll call that one a score draw. Wish I could have said that on Sunday. This joke's wearing a bit thin now, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Let it go,
yeah,
man.
I'll let it go. I'll stop making football references. At least I can laugh about myself.
Save yourself. In a week, it's the derby.
Yeah, don't tell me. You see, Paul Peter's already got bad words stored up for the derby.
Oh, excellent.
I'm probably tomorrow. I'm probably Atalanta next week. Anyway, yeah, you need that panel displayed so that you can actually see what filters are displayed. Although, having said that, it doesn't actually tell you that it is revenue per product for January, February and March for China and Japan. It's actually telling you which ones it's hidden rather than which ones it's displaying. So that's a bit sort of backwards. But anyway, right, I want to delete the filters, and you may just spot here there's a little bin icon. So I can click the bin icon and that will delete the filter. You don't have to delete them all, but I've deleted them all, and as you delete a filter it just changes the data automatically. Now I want to see the revenue for revenue per product for orders over £1,000. All right, this is where it started getting interesting for me when I was looking at it, because it wasn't doing what I wanted, and I don't actually think it's capable of doing what I wanted. I couldn't find a way of doing it. So I want the revenue per product for orders over 1,000, not where the total revenue is over 1,000. Obviously, all those total revenues are over 1,000. What I was trying to do was say, show me only the products where the total revenue was over, and I picked a figure something like 100,000, and it wasn't doing it, and that's the bit I don't think it can do. So what I am actually going to do is say, let's have a look at the raw data and where the individual orders revenue was over 1,000. That's what we're interested in. So it can do that. So what we'll do is we'll add a filter on revenue and select number, select greater than, and type in 1,000. Okay, and once I've done that, that should country from Wales. Yeah, that should that doesn't know. Why didn't that work?
You see, this is because you've been rude to it.
I'm not being rude to it. Well, maybe a bit. Let me do that again. Add filter, revenue, number greater than 1,000. That's better. That's better. That's what I was after. I don't think I pressed enter after I typed 1,000. I think that was the problem. And what you can now see is it's only showing you the products for the ones where the revenue is over 1,000. So it's showing you the total revenue, but it's only showing you for those products that are over 1,000. So what I'll do is I'll actually drag product out and drag country sold to in. So you can see that we've got China is 56,173. Okay, so basically what that's doing is it's saying, okay, pick up all the China ones, but only where the revenue is over 1,000. So that's what it's doing. That's what that filter is doing. It's showing where the revenue is greater than 1,000, but it's looking at the raw data. Okay. So if I was to add in another filter and I was to add in fact, let's put this back to having product in there and not country sold to. So what I'll do now is I'll go and add another filter. And this time I'll add country sold to and just choose China. So that is showing me only the products that we sold to China where the revenue for the individual order was over 1,000. Okay, so as I said, what I was trying to do is I was trying to say only show me the rows, or only show me the products in this case, where the total revenue was over, let's say, 100,000. So when I clicked add a filter, it doesn't give me revenue sum. So I've got revenue, but that, as you can see looking at those numbers, that is the individual revenues from this column here. It doesn't appear that I can do that kind of filter. I couldn't find a way of doing it, and in my research I couldn't find a way of doing it. So I think that is a limitation. But as I said, I'm sure they'll fix that one. Okay, let me see if they've got any questions. No, we're just talking about whatever you're talking about, chickens, I think, by the look of it. Okay, so let's carry on. Right, formatting. No, before we get to formatting, create a table for the source data. So I've cleared the filters, and if I click into one of these cells here, and is it right click? Bear with me a second. Create a table. What?
Brilliant Sigma's just joined us and he's mentioned the football.
Really? Too late.
You are never going to live this down, Mike.
Too late. We've that ship has sailed, as they say. There it is. That's what I was looking for. Right. If I right click, let's say on the total revenue for shoes, and choose create a table for source data, what it will do is it will create a table. Seems to have replaced my, oh no, it's put it below the pivot table. There we go. What it's done is it's created a table that is made up of the individual items that number represents. So it's actually very much like Excel, where in Excel you double click on the cell there. So what it's done is it's taken a subset of this data, but it's only the data for shoes. It is a static table, but it's quite useful if you want to drill down and see what that data, where that data's come from. Okay, so I'll do that again with socks. So if I right click, create table for source data, there it is. Let's now add in something else into this pivot table. Let's add in country sold to into columns. So we've now got a breakdown of revenue per product and per country. So let's just take skirts to Germany, right click on that number, create table for source data, and what we now get is a nice little table that shows us just the rows from the original data which represent where that number has come from. So sales of skirts for Germany. So quite a handy feature, that. Okay, let's look at formatting. Okie dokie. Right, one of the things that was asked last week was, could you hide the rows, the total rows and columns? And I wasn't sure, and yes, you can. I think it was Renee asked it. So what you do is you click on that little circle there. So in this organize panel, you click on that circle next to the heading rows or columns, and from there you can hide the grand total column, which means that the grand total column is now hidden. If you want to bring it back, you can do that. And you can hide the grand total row. Okay, so it is fairly simple if you do want to hide the titles. You don't have that option for the values. Sorry, hide the totals, not hide the titles. Okay, so you can do that if you want to. You do have this option here, swap columns and row fields. So obviously now we've got the countries down here and the product names across here. But I actually find it easier, probably because I'm an Excel boy, just to drag and drop these and swap them over that way. But you know, it doesn't really matter. There's two ways to do it. If I wanted to format these cells as currency, then I would just select the cells there, and once I've done that, I would go up to format and go to cells and then just format them as currency. Let's say with no decimal places. So there's no special formatting options when it comes to pivot tables. Just use the standard formatting options that are built into Numbers. So if you wanted to format the table, you've got various built-in table styles that you can choose from. You've got the number formatting. If you don't want to see this title, table 1 pivot, then you can just take the tick out of the title box and you can add a caption or clear the caption. So your title could be, for example, revenue per country. And your caption, if you choose to have one, could be January to May. So these titles and these captions, these appear just as sort of it's like a cell, but it's not really a cell. It's text. It's a text block that appears above the pivot table and below the pivot table. Standard tables can have them as well. So again, it's nothing particularly new, but they've just implemented that feature with pivot tables, and it just allows you to have a title and a caption or subtitle, if you like. Okay, if you want to change the font size, you can do that. So you can change the outline, the colors. You can choose to show or hide the grid lines, and you can have alternating row colors like that. You can tell I'm not a graphic person if I'm using those horrendous mix of red and green. And you can also change the row heights and the column widths, but you can also do the same thing in the traditional way here. Okay, one other thing to show you is if I click into the pivot table and go to the Arrange tab, you can lock the pivot table so that you can't actually move it. You also can't make any changes to it either. So you have to go and unlock it, which is on the Format Arrange tab, and then Unlock. Now you can lock, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can lock most things in Numbers, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I could lock this table here to stop people editing it and stop people moving it, which is something you can't do in Excel. Well, no, you can't. You can apply protection, but it's not as simple as clicking a button to lock it. So yeah, if you did want to prevent changes to it, you can lock it, but that also stops you refreshing it. So you're going to have to unlock it in order to be able to refresh it, because all the options on the pivot options menu are unavailable if it's locked. Alrighty, so I think that is session 3 done on Numbers.
Awesome. Right, what did I say was next? Oh yes, we were going into that, weren't we? Right, okay then, I will do this. I don't know what you want to do in terms of stopping your recording or leaving it going. I will leave that.
I'll just leave it going.
Right, I have some freebies. All right, links in there, Mike.
Right.
Freebies are... Why aren't you moving? Oh, come on. Don't drive me mad. 15 calligraphy fonts. Some of these are very, very nice. So that's only a handful of them. Strangely, because normally I'd go to font sites, but I found these on Elegant Themes. So that's the URL, but there is a QR code at the top. And Mike will post it into the chat as well.
Yeah, there we go.
Because I have something else as well, which is not quite free, but it's definitely worth having. So I shall leave that there so you've got enough time to look at it. And then we are going to look at something related to NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month, which is November every year. There is a special version of Scrivener for NaNoWriMo. Normally a Scrivener trial is 30 days, which wouldn't give you, well, it would if you started on the first day, but it would be tight. So they're giving you a longer trial. So if you've not taken the trial before, in fact, I think it works even if you have, you can use this trial for 7 weeks. And it started on the 15th of October and it will run till the 7th of December. But there is more than that. Right. What they're doing is, it's a special trial version, but if you use it for NaNoWriMo and you win NaNoWriMo, now how do you win NaNoWriMo? You win by doing your 50,000 words. Then you will qualify for 50% off a Scrivener license. Now, if you've already got Scrivener, and maybe you're working on Windows or you're working on a Mac, but you don't have the other one, then you could still use it on the other platform. So it might be useful even if you have Scrivener to get Scrivener on the other platform. The way it works is this trial version and the new version that was released about 2 days ago has a setting in it where you can post your word count up to the NaNoWriMo site starting on Monday. So you can automatically send your word count up there, and then at the end of it, if that is over 50,000 words, you will get 50% discount. If not, you can still get 20% off the price of Scrivener with the NaNoWriMo 21 code. So just use that and you can buy and get a discount with it. Who wouldn't want that? So you just need to go to the site and download the new version to get that. If you are unaware of NaNoWriMo, NaNoWriMo is where you can sign up, and what you're saying is, I'm going to write 50,000 words in the next 30 days. The 30 days running from the 1st of November to the end of November. I've never done the novel thing, but I have done a 30-day challenge in terms of writing stuff. Obviously, being on bed rest, I could probably write quite a bit, couldn't I? But I'm going to get cranky, aren't I, if I'm not in front of my iMac. If I'm using a laptop or I'm using an iPad, bad words are going to be said. Maybe I should have a lower target. What do you think? Maybe 20,000? That would work.
Peter has sent you something in Slack.
Right, I'll go and have a look.
I'm assuming it's a photo from the dog show last week.
Oh, right, I'll go and have a look.
It's white and furry.
Oh, how cool. Like our baby, who's been looking at me like, yeah, whatever, but can you bring some treats into the bedroom and then feed me from a prone position? As long as she gets a treat, she doesn't care. So that's NaNoWriMo, that's the offer you've got on Scrivener, and those are the free fonts. So, shall I hand over to you for your next bit?
Hand over to me for my next trick. Renee said that maybe we could say that Numbers is getting matured. I would say so. Anything that's got pivot tables is getting there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It could do with some other stuff, but, if they add... not the really weird stuff, but if they add powerful stuff that people actually use, then it could actually edge ahead because it still has the layout canvas that Excel just don't seem to want to know about.
Which, as I said, is what I like. I do like that.
Although, and we did talk about actually doing this as a demo, the one that I did for the church count, which was horrifically complex. There was a reason I decided, despite the layout options in Numbers, to do it in Excel. I just wish I could remember what that reason was. If it ever comes back to me, I'll share it. But I did. I mean, to get the layout we needed was horrific in Excel. You have to iterate because you put things where you think they should be, and then you realise that there needs to be another column. You add the column, and then that sends everything else out. So it was complicated to do it. I just wish I could remember why. But if it comes to me, I'll let you know. Right, okay then, let's head on back to you, and this time your baby, your Excel.
Yeah, this is a real spreadsheet.
Ooh, ouch. Is that like Liverpool or a real team?
I was just going to say that, but you told me to drop it. Yeah.
Oh, come on, it's all right. It'll be fine.
Yes, it'll be fine. Right, okay. Data model, again. Quick recap and then taking it further. So, in previous sessions, we've established what the data model is. It's a place inside an Excel file which is used to store data, and that data has to be structured in a row column format or a tabular format. And the main reasons to store data in the data model are if you want to create a pivot table from multiple data sets, as long as those data sets are related. And also the fact that the data model can store much, much more data than the worksheet can. But even if you're working with a single, relatively small data set, the recommendation is still to store the data in the data model. So hence in this file, the data is stored in the data model. To get to the data model, you go to the Power Pivot tab and you click Manage. And that opens up another window. And this is the data model window. So you can see I've actually got 1,136 rows of data, which is a relatively small amount of data. We're not talking hundreds of thousands. We're not talking millions. So it's a relatively small amount of data and it's a single table. So we're not taking advantage of the things that I've just said, huge amounts of data and multiple tables. But as I've just said, even if you are working on a small single data set, the recommendation, and this has come from Microsoft themselves, this is the way they're pushing everybody, is to not store that data in the spreadsheet, but to store that data in the data model. Now, that does assume that what you ultimately want to do with that data is create pivot tables. It might be that you want to create some charts, but the charts need to be based on pivot tables because you need to summarize the data first. So if you are going to, in any way, shape or form, create pivot tables from that data, stick the data in the data model. If you just want, and this only applies to Windows, I've said that before, maybe Microsoft will implement the data model in the Mac version of Excel at some point. I have no idea. But yeah, if you actually just needed to store rows and columns of data like a database and not particularly do anything with that data, and you just need that data to be visible, then there's no harm in storing that data in the spreadsheet. It could be a list of names and addresses of people in your club or something like that, or it could be the songs that we play in 196. But even then, you could still store it in the data model, but instead of viewing it directly in the spreadsheet, you've just got this extra couple of clicks and the data is there. I personally would store the data in the data model all the time, because even if it is a list of songs that we've played on Brooklands, or even if it is all the show details from MacBites, it might be today you want nothing more than store that data in Excel, but tomorrow you want to build some pivot tables from that data. Anyway, that's just a recap of the whys and wherefores of the data model. I think I've said it before, but I think I've focused in the last couple of weeks on things to do with building pivot tables and not really talked about the reasons behind it. So I just thought I'd spend a few minutes doing that. But I also want to do a recap on calculated columns. Also talk about measures, which I briefly introduced last week, and then take that a step further. And to me, all of this is building blocks. To understand measures, you need to understand calculated columns. To understand calculated columns, you need to know why we put in the data in the data model. Anyway, calculated columns. Let me switch back to the data model. There's a time when there's time when you need to create additional columns in a table that's stored in the data model. And why you would do that? Well, let's imagine that you need on a pivot table to show the profit per flavour. Okay, so I want to show the profit per flavour. The problem I've got is I don't have a profit column. So in my pivot table, if I clicked on Insert Pivot Table from Data Model, I don't have profit listed there. So I could drag flavour into rows and I get a list of the flavours, but I don't have profit listed there. I could drag revenue into values, cost into values, and then manually create some formulas here to calculate the profit, but that's very long-winded, and those formulas in column D won't be part of the pivot table. So I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is switch back to the data model and create my profit column in here. And I do it like you would in Excel using a formula. So I go to this new blank column at the end, double click on the heading and over type add column with profit and press enter. And then I build the formula up here in the formula bar, and the formula will be total revenue minus total cost. Now I can either start typing the words total revenue and select from a list, or as long as the equal sign is there, I can click on the heading total revenue, a bit like when you click on a cell in the spreadsheet. Total revenue minus total cost. So you've got two ways of creating a formula where the formula references a column name. And press enter. And that gives me my profit. For some reason, I've got an odd number of decimal places, an inconsistent number of decimal places. That must be because the total cost is showing an odd number of decimal places, and that'll be something to do with the raw data that was loaded into the data model. But what I'll do is I'll change the decimal places. I'll just change it to 2 decimal places, and I'll do the same thing for cost, and then we've got some consistency. There we go. I'm just using the formatting options up here. So there's one of our calculated fields, and then if I go back to the data model, back to the spreadsheet, that profit column should be in here, and I can just drag and drop it into values, and I've now got the pivot table I want, profit per product. But I actually want to show not the product names, but the product codes. So this company internally, each product is given an internal code. So banana is ban, chocolate is cha, mint chocolate is min, peach is p, which is a bit odd because you probably wouldn't get a pea flavoured ice cream, and so on and so forth. So it's the first 3 characters of the product name, and that is the product code. So we want to see profit by product code. We don't want to see the product names. So if we're seeing the first 3 characters of the product name, does that remind you of anything?
Is this the football thing?
Yes.
I can't get used to it that they put MUN because I think it's Munich.
No, it's MUN.
MUN,
isn't it? Yeah. I'm just thinking like ENG and Hun. Hungary.
Oh, it could be bad. It could be really bad.
I'm sure it could. Yeah, we're talking about the score that they stick at the top left-hand corner of the match, and they abbreviate all the team and country names to the first 3 characters, which is where I got this idea from. Anyway, I need, as I said, to create another column because in the underlying data, I don't have a column for product code. So I will create a new column, double click there, call it product code, and then create the formula. Now, as I said, I want to take the first 3 characters of the flavour name and convert it to uppercase. So I'm going to use 2 functions, upper and left, just like you have in Excel, because the the formula language that is built into Power Pivot, which is what controls the data model, and that language is called DAX, D-A-X. That is actually based on Excel formulas. So I'll put equals upper, open brackets. What?
Nothing.
Is there a football reference?
There's a football reference. Oh, drink. We should turn this into a drinking game. Very nicely done, Brilliance.
That's the one, Brilliance. Yes, that's the one. Yeah. Right. Where were we? I'm going to ignore the chat, just like I ignore Twitter on Sunday afternoon. Yeah. Anyway, equals upper, open brackets, left, open brackets, flavour, comma 3, close brackets. In fact, 2 closing brackets. So that is going to convert into uppercase the first 3 characters of the flavour value. So just in case anyone didn't know what we were talking about, Brilliance has put it into the chat. Go and have a look at the chat.
Excellent example there. Very well done.
You'll see exactly what we're talking about. Okay, so there we go. Product code. So what I will do now is drag flavour out of rows and drag product code into rows. And there we go. That is my pivot table. Okay. Right. Now, the calculated columns can be placed anywhere at all in the pivot table. Okay, you can see that we've got a calculated column in the rows section. We've got a calculated column in the values section. I could put a calculated column in the columns section, and that way we turn the pivot table 90 degrees. So we've got the product codes as column headings, but obviously it looks better as row headings. So you can take the calculated columns and put them anywhere. I could even, let's remove the product code. So let's take that out and instead bring in state. So I'm going to put state in there. So that gives us profit per state. And I'm going to drag the product code into filters. So that allows us to filter by product code. So I could say I'm only interested in looking at profit per state for strawberry ice cream. So the fact it's got STR there, it's applied a filter. That would work as well for a slicer. So let's clear that. Let's drag the product code out of filters and insert a slicer. So pivot table analyze, insert slicer, product code, click OK. There's all the product codes, and as you click on the buttons, it applies exactly the same filter. So it's 2 different ways of being able to filter by product code. So the point I'm making is, and I'll clear this slicer now and delete it, the point I'm making is those calculated columns can appear in any of these sections. You could even put the profit into the rows if you wanted to. It gives you nonsensical data, but you can do. So any calculated column is treated by Excel as a normal column. So when you go into the data model, the only way that you can see whether a column was calculated or not, the only way you can see it is by clicking on its heading and looking to see, is there a formula there? Is there a formula there? So source of order, what you're seeing as you click on these column headings is the first value from the column. But when you click on these column headings, you're seeing the formula. So whether it's a calculated column or whether it's a column that came from the original data, you can use any of those columns in any of those sections within the pivot table. So that brings us on to measures. Let's just see if there's any questions or comments. Or we?
No, that's me typing somebody else's fingers, clearly.
Okay.
Brilliance is a United fan, though, so suffering with the rest of us.
I know Brilliance is a United fan. But you need to have the ability to laugh at yourself these days, being a United fan.
Can I just say, that was not what he said on Sunday.
No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. We could get a whole show out of that, couldn't we?
We absolutely could. It was that bad.
Yeah.
When was the last time we got stuffed that badly?
Was it 6-1 against Tottenham last season, or was it 6 or 5 against City? I can't remember. Blanked it out of my mind. Yeah, maybe Brilliance could do the same. Just saying. Right, where are we? Yeah, measures. That's what I wanted to move on to next. So, right, let me drag product code back into there. So we've got profit per product. It's the product code, but it's profit per product. Okay, so whilst a calculated column generates a value, and I mean by value, I don't just mean a number, I mean text, number, or date. So calculated columns generate a value for each row. We know that because back in the data model, there is an entry for each row. So all the way down the product code column, there's 1,136 values. Same for the profit column, there's 1,136 values because there is a value for each row. So whilst a calculated column generates a value for each row, a measure generates a single value. In some situations, a measure can replace a calculated column, but not always, because measures can only be put into the values section of a pivot table. So if you created a measure, and we'll be creating a few measures in a minute, if you created a measure, it would appear in this list here, and if you try to drag it into filters, columns or rows, it won't let you. You can only put a measure in the values section. So you still will need calculated columns. They still have their place. Don't think measures totally replace calculated columns. If we needed to show the row, product codes, the product codes have been generated through a formula. And the only place we can put the product codes are filters, columns and rows. So we cannot have measures in filters, columns and rows. Therefore, we still need the product code column. But we don't particularly need the profit column. So yes, you can put the profit in filters, columns or rows, but really the profit is going to go in the values section, and anything that goes in the values section can be replaced by a measure. Okay, so the product code can't be replaced by a measure because you wouldn't put the product code into the values section. The product code would either go in rows, columns or filters, and measures can't go in rows, columns or filters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the profit column by going to Power Pivot Manage to the data model, I'm going to right click on profit and delete it. So it's gone. And if I go back to the spreadsheet, we've now lost the profit column from our pivot table, which is fine. But I'm going to make a measure instead. To make a measure, you go to Power Pivot, Measures, New Measure, and give the measure a name. I'm going to call the measure profit. You can call it anything you like, but I tend to put my measure names in uppercase and give them a logical name. So the profit is, if you think about it, the profit is the total revenue minus the total cost. We're not calculating the profit for each row in the data model. We're calculating the profit as being the total revenue. So add up all the revenue figures from one column and subtract from it all the revenue figures in the cost column. So the formula would be equals sum, open brackets, revenue, close brackets, minus sum, open brackets, cost, close brackets. So total revenue minus total cost. Now, because my cursor was already in this pivot table, as soon as I clicked OK to create the measure, it gets added to the pivot table. But if my cursor wasn't in that pivot table, then I'd have to go to that pivot table and drag profit into values. You'll notice that it won't let me drag it into filters, columns and rows. It'll only let me drag it into values. So I actually get exactly the same results as if I'd done a calculated column. Now, obviously, one visible difference is that you have FX there. The FX indicates that it is a measure. But behind the scenes, the benefit of having a measure is that it takes up less memory. Because in the data model, if we had the profit column, there would be one number for every row. So there'd be 1,136 numbers. Here, we just have the profit figures generated on the fly. They don't have to be pre-calculated. And therefore you're saving space. So your Excel file will be smaller and hopefully performance will be better. Let's create another measure to calculate the tax. So how much tax do we have to pay? And let's say the tax is 10% of the profit. So I'm going to go into the data model. No, I'm not going to go into the data model. I'm going to go to the Power Pivot window, Power Pivot menu, and create a new measure. And I'll call the measure tax. And there's two ways I could do this. I could put sum of revenue minus sum of cost multiplied by 0.1, because the tax is 10% of the profit. So that calculates the profit and multiplies it by 0.1. So that's one way of doing it. But another way of doing it would be to put equals profit, where profit is a measure of its own, profit multiplied by 0.1. So in other words, you can use a measure within a measure. So I can use the profit measure within this measure. Click on OK. And there is the tax, which if you look is 10% of each one of those. And once you've got these measures defined, you can use them in any pivot tables. Now let's say I need to know how many orders there were per state. So I'm going to create another pivot table from the data model. I'm going to drag in the states and drop that into rows. Now, we've done this many times before. You want to do a count. You need to count how many orders there were for each state. So in other words, back in the data model, we need to go through the states and count how many times each of these states is mentioned. And to do that, you drag a column into the values section that has no blanks in it. So I could drag state in there, and that tells me how many times each state name appears. But you're not actually limited to dragging state in there. You could drag any column in there. It will still do a count. Unless the column you drag in has numbers in it, like revenue, in which case it does a sum, and then you have to change it to a count. So you've got a couple of problems. The biggest problem is if there's missing data, because when you drag a column heading from this list into the values section and you have it set as a count, it's only counting non-blank values. So if there happened to be some data that was missing, let's say for some reason we'd chosen to count on this column and one of the quantities was missing, then it would only add up to 1135 and not 1136. So this is where using the count rows function means that you don't have to worry about dragging a particular column in. And the count rows function is a measure function. So create a new measure. I'm going to call the measure, what should I call the measure? Order count. Let's call it order count. And the function, the calculation behind the scenes, is going to be count rows equals count rows, and then the name of the table, which is sales. And then all you have to do is drag in the count order count measure, drop it into values, and it does the count for you. That way you're not worried about which of these columns to drag in. You've got a ready-made formula, if you like, which is doing a count of the number of rows. Okay, and I want to move on to something new, and that is the calculate function. It still measures, but it's the calculate function. So let me sort of give you a context. Okay, I want a pivot table that shows profit per flavour just for Florida. So started a new sheet. I'm going to create a pivot table and profit per flavour just for Florida. So drag flavour in there, drag profit in there, and drag state into filters, and then apply a filter on Florida. But let's say I also want number of orders per flavour just for Florida as a separate pivot table. I know I could put it as the same pivot table, but I want it as a separate pivot table. So let's insert from the data model. Okay, and drag flavour in again, and drag order count in, and then drag, where's it gone, state into filters, and set that to Florida. Okay, so I have two pivot tables, but I have had to apply a filter to both. One of the problems is it's easy for a user to change the filter. What would be, it could be that you have decided to have one sheet for each state. So I could actually rename this Florida. I'm not going to do the other sheets because it's just rinse and repeat. But what's to stop somebody coming along to this sheet and then changing the filter? And what they've then done is, even though it's the Florida sheet, they've then changed the filter to Indiana. You can protect the worksheet. You can lock the whole worksheet. Not as simple as you can in Numbers, but you can lock the worksheet, but it's a little bit messy. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a measure to show the profit for Florida. So first of all, set both of these back to all. And once I've set these back to all, I'm going to clear the filter from both pivot tables. There we go. And then I need to build a measure. So power pivot measures new measure. And the measure name I'm going to call Florida profit. So that's one measure. I'll create another measure for Florida count, but this is one measure. So the formula, because it's going to calculate the profit but apply a filter, this is where you have to use the calculate function. So the calculate function is used when you want to perform some kind of calculation but with an applied filter, and this is exactly what we're doing. The calculation is the profit, the filter is state equals Florida. So bless you. The formula will be profit, which we've already got as another measure. Otherwise, I could have done sum of revenue minus sum of cost, comma, and then it will be state equals Florida. Like that. And click OK. So I now have a measure. So what I will now do is replace this profit with Florida profit. And what that gives me is the profit, but just for Florida. And that way we don't need a filter. And anybody coming and looking at this pivot table, there's no point amending it. There's no need to amend it because the formula that is built into the values section is showing the profit just for Florida. So let's do another measure just to finish off with. So create another measure and call this one Florida count. Can't type. Florida count, and then the formula will be equals calculate. The expression, now I've already created a measure that does the counting, whose name I've forgotten.
We've all been there, Mike.
Yeah. Was it count orders or something? Order count, there it is, order count. You can tell which are the measures because they've got the sigma symbol amongst them and against them. That's like brilliant sigma, isn't it? Okay, so then the expression, the filter is going to be state equals Florida. Like that. And then what I'll do is I'll drag that measure into here. So you can actually see the difference between the numbers. That's the total orders, and that is the orders for Florida. And I'll take the total orders away. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. That is measures. So what we covered today, we've done a recap of the data model. Then we've looked at calculated columns. Then we've looked at measures. And in particular, we've looked at the calculate function, which is part of measures. So let's see if there are any questions.
I'm sure there's going to be loads of questions about measures. Right, let me get in here.
Are you being funny?
No, I'm not.
Good.
Right, I've just taken a picture.
Of me?
No, not of you. Not of you. No, I've taken a picture because when I do the unboxing, it's not going to make any sense whatsoever unless I explain what we're looking at. Oh, and you can see my pot of pills on there and my glass. Right, we'll leave that alone though. So have you got any questions?
There don't appear to be any questions, but we're still 30 seconds behind because I can still see my last screen on the live feed.
That's very true. Very true.
So if you've got any questions, let me know. Measures are the way forward. I've had that from the horse's mouth.
Oh.
And I don't mean satire. But somebody that works at Microsoft, I was discussing calculated columns versus measures with him, and he told me that measures the way forward. And I said, good, because that's what I've been doing.
Excellent.
So,
right, okay then we'll move swiftly along to the unboxing. There we go. Well, yeah, it'd be nice if that was working, but you never know. Right, fingers crossed for the video. That's looking good to me. Obviously, a lot of detritus on the desk. But apart from that, at least I can move the keyboard. Now, that one won't make any sense until we've unboxed this one. It rattles. Right, let's have a look at this one then. Right, this was something that I had put off for a while and then decided after some issues I was going to have to go for it. Right. It is an extender bar, is what it is, that's going to go and replace the extender bar that I currently have. So you would need to see the first extender bar for the second one to have any meaning. But let's get it out of the packet first, and then we'll look at the picky. Right, out of the packet it comes. So it is a bar on which you mount this on a tripod or stand of some description, and then you can attach to it in various ways. So you could have them, you'd probably have them halfway, wouldn't you? So it was even. Devices, which could be webcams or they could be other things. So just to show you what I've got and why I'm replacing it, let's switch to the picky that I have. Literally just taken right now. So let's switch to that. That's what we've got right now. So there is a bar there, and it is on a stand in the middle. And you can see that there's a webcam at either end of it. One of the webcams was the one that worked last week when the other one didn't. But the other one, the one we're using tonight, is actually... why is my mouse not moving? Is actually this one. So I have the two on there. Just in case. So this is the one we're using tonight, which is the Logitech. But when the Logitech throws its toys out of the pram, then we go to this one, which is the cheap and cheerful replacement. So I have to have both of them mounted just in case. Now, before that, I actually had, instead of on the right, this cheap and cheerful one, I had another Logitech, which is on the desk somewhere now. But what I think I need is all three cameras mounted and something else. So the starting point of doing that was unboxing this, which is going to give me the opportunity to attach three cameras and something else. So all I'll do with this is take the two off the stand and replace it with this one. And then I'm going to need whatever is in here, which was an afterthought. So this arrived a day later. But all of my toys were taken off me, weren't they, until I was feeling a little bit better.
Yeah.
That's not going to make me feel better, having my toys suspended. Right, so I haven't even seen these at all. There we go. So the idea of this next bit is to make this stand completely independent. So it is a little light. So I'll put three cameras and a light on this. So let's have a look at the light. It looked nice and compact, which was what I needed, because I don't want it to be that big on this stand, or it would be top heavy and it would topple over. So this one looked about the right size. So let's have a look at it. Come on, in we go. There we go. I wonder if it's got any juice in it and if I can turn it on. Let's have a look. Oh, it does. It does. There we go. Nice. So the idea of that is, oh, and you can turn it up as well. Oh, lovely, isn't it? There we go. Should we have it over the top there? Well, actually, it would be from here. So that works quite nicely, doesn't it? I've already got one light on it, which is much higher up. But that's going to be much better. So it's going to make this totally independent in terms of I don't need to take it somewhere where there's a light. This is multifunction as well, I believe. So there is switches on the back. So this switch actually turns it on and controls the intensity, but I think this one controls the colour. So if we turn it on and then fiddle with this one, let's get it down there. Yeah, one is much warmer, as you hopefully can see, and the other one is much cooler, much bluer. This is how... can you actually see that? See the red lights? That's how much it's charged. And let's switch it off. And then this bit here has hot shoe mount, and it also has the mount that I would be using. So I would suspect this would go somewhere in the middle of this, and then I'd have 2 cameras on one side and 1 camera on the other. So let's try that. But I won't put the cameras on as well. I'll be here all night. Go on, you're going to work. You know you want to. You know you do. Yeah, I think that's working. Let me move it over there while I do that. There we go. So you end up with something that looks like that from the front with webcams on it, or that from the back. But the idea for me is I don't then have to drag the other lights around with me. I might decide, haven't decided totally yet. I have got 3 cameras and they work when they feel like it. So that was the idea of having all 3. But I did get 2 of the lights. So I might decide to put 2 lights on it. I haven't decided yet. Let's get it working first and see how it is. So hopefully that'll all be set up by next week, which means the unboxings won't be as perilous as they usually are when it throws its toys out of the pram with exactly what camera it will and won't work with. Tonight's been relatively painless because I said to Mike, I'll do an unboxing if I can, but if the cameras aren't playing ball, I'll just have to wait. But no, tonight has been good. So that's what I've ordered. I think that was about £20. But it's very light and very bright. And you can also use that on standard cameras, which you see these days instead of people using flash. So, yeah, I might use that for that as well. And it's got mounts on all sides here. So I shall have to have a look at the instructions. That's not like me, is it? What have we got in the box with it? Oh, we've got all of this. And Facebook pages. Oh, how lovely. I'll probably have to take a screenshot of this and... make it larger. It's difficult to read these things now. Now I know how my poor mother felt when she used to say to me, can you read that to me? Right, what else have we got in here? Oh, we have one of these. This is some other kind of mount that may or may not be needed. It's not going to be needed for what I want. And a charging cable. And it charges at USB-C, which is unusual, isn't it? It's usual the cheapy Kindle one. But no, it USB-C charges. And that is, where's that? Where's the port for it? Oh, there, bang in the middle, underneath the red lights. So just in the middle under the red lights. That's looking like it's got possibilities. So fingers crossed for that. I'm just sick of every time we have to get the cameras out, it's like, oh, they're never going to work today. We have to wait. But no, I'm confident that just might work. So I had the devil's own job finding one of these that had 4 on it. I knew I'd seen one and I'd deliberately gone for 2 because I didn't want it to be too big. But if I put that in front of there, it's not double the length. So the other one is, yeah, the other one goes up to there. So it's literally just about another 3.5 to 4 inches, and yet you've got another 2 devices on it. So, yes, that theoretically will work rather well. So, fingers crossed, with whatever we've got to unbox next week, it looks amazing. Fingers crossed. I can't see the chat at the moment because I've lost that now. But there we go. There.
Renee says, does it go to 6,500 Kelvin?
I'm not sure. Let's have a look. I'm not going to be able to read that right now.
And Kim wants to know where Chicken is.
Where did Chicken? Oh, no, there's Chicken. There's Chicken. He's here. Don't worry. Chicken's here. There's Chicken. Whee! It's still here. Right, let's have a look at the kelvins on this. I'm going to have to look at it through my phone, I think. Right, I'm looking at the manual. It's blurred as anything. Right, let's have a look.
That squeak probably woke Kiva up.
It didn't wake our girl up, did it? That's blurred. I can't tell. Not from that. Let me do it again.
You know the other chicken?
Yeah.
Well, I threw it in the garden and it went between the 2 bins. And she just barked and barked for me to go and retrieve it.
Yes, it's for you to do.
And I said to her, if that had been a squirrel or a frog, you'd have been in there.
I wish you would. Right, I've managed to take a photo of it, Renee, and I've managed to get the French one. But that's fine, because you speak French, don't you? So, temperature de couleur, and it says 3,200 to 5,600, and then it's got a plus and a minus of 200k on it. So hopefully you can see that at the bottom. That's what it says. As long as it lights it up, I don't care. It's nice and bright for me, but hopefully that's the information that you need. Right, now pay attention. The next bit's really important. So, let me get into there, and let's get you to there. Right. This is important because the first time this happened, there was chaos, wasn't there?
There was.
Oh, there was. Right, let's move over here because it's in that kind of mood. Right, the clocks are going back in the UK on Sunday. They are not budging in the States. So, next week will be at a different time. This is where it all gets terribly confusing. If you've put it on your calendar, and you subscribe to the calendar, it'll be correct. But if you've not, then you need to think about it. So, next week is the 5th of November. So before we go any further, the 5th of November in the UK is Bonfire Night or Guy Fawkes Day, depending on what you want to call it. So we could be inundated and will be by what will sound like a mortar attack during the show. But, just adds to the ambience, doesn't it? So, here's the important thing. In the UK, it'll be 9 o'clock. So no change there, but the clocks will have moved. Eastern time, it's going to be 5 o'clock. And Pacific, it's going to be 2 o'clock. So basically, it's all going to be an hour later, isn't it?
Mm.
Is that right? Am I right with that?
No.
Oh, no!
Hang on. Yeah, yes, that's right.
I am.
That's right, yes.
Yes, I am. Definitely.
Yeah.
Right, so basically it's going to be 4 hours and 7 hours, not 5 hours and 8 hours. And in Central Europe, I do believe it's going to be 10 o'clock, which means that you will probably have changed yours. But here's the best thing to do. Click on the link in the email, because that'll be right.
I'll look in Slack. Right. We'll put it in Slack.
Yeah, it's always confusing. In fact, do you know what I did today from my deathbed? I clambered out to sort out the church newsletter on account of the fact the parish secretary's not well either. And on the front of the newsletter that they're going to be given on Sunday, it said make sure you put your clocks back. Because if you don't, you'll arrive at Mass an hour early. And I thought, is it not a bit late on Sunday? Because if you're reading this, you've probably arrived an hour early. Anyway, that's what's going on. Right, moving along. We have all of this available on demand at youtube.com/ElaineGiles. And there is a playlist, an after hours playlist, which has all of the shows on it. And you can get to that at macbites.co.uk/after hours playlist. Now, the idea is, but don't hold us to this in terms of any day, but presupposing that I am able to leave my sickbed, there will be a MacBites, and that will be previewed at some point in the week. It'll be 8 o'clock if it's going to happen at all, but I can't tell you what night, obviously, not yet, but it'll be on MacBites FM. Right, we love you guys. If you love us, could you give us a like? Because it really impresses YouTube. Right, I've been dilatory with my mails this week, I know, but there are reasons. So, normally, there would be mails coming from elainegiles.com/VIP. So that's all the stuff that I do, but not the MacBites episodes. That's basically the difference. And then we have macbites.co.uk/macbites-mail, which is all the MacBites stuff. And we have a fabulous Slack chat room, where we carry on the conversation. And you've been so kind this week. I need to get in there, but Mike's banned me. He's banned me from a lot this week, but I will get in because now there's a picture of a dog, so I get to go in and see it. You will find that at macbites.co.uk/Slack. It's totally free. Do join us. We would love to have you with us. And you can contact us on all of those, using all of that as well. Sometimes you're even on Twitter, aren't you?
Occasionally. I've just clicked on the bartender 3 dots. And because I've got my machine at 16.9, the leftmost icon is almost up to the help menu. So if I had a notch, there'd be a bit missing.
Ah, the notch.
The notch.
The notch is a total embarrassment. I mean, Renee mentioned there's a notch on the phone and you don't bother. No, you don't.
No, I don't.
But it's not obscuring the interface. They redesigned the interface. So one of the things I really missed when I got my new phone, this was an iPhone 11 2 years ago, I really missed seeing the battery percentage. But you have to swipe down for that now. They didn't leave it there and then it disappeared behind the notch and then no one can see it again. They put it in a location where you could see it through a different way. But this is just like, yeah, let's carve a bit out of the screen and leave it. I don't understand it. Could they fix it with a software update? Only if you make the text smaller. It's as if, I mean, the notch is cognizant of the fact if you move the mouse to it and the mouse doesn't go into the notch area. It's like if you move the mouse to the edge of the screen. It stops. You can't go any further. So it knows that the notch is there in terms of the mouse, but when all the stuff's on the menu, it seems to have no idea whatsoever that it's there. It's a really strange decision to me. But that's me. Luckily, I wasn't in the market for one. Can you imagine if you had really seriously been in the market for one? And then you saw the notch and you thought, no, I can't do it. I can't do it with the notch. That would be bad news. I know Renee's ordered. What about the rest of you? Let me get the chat so I can see the chat. There we go. I can see the chat now. Or I could do if I was on the right page. There we go. Okay. Okay. Oh, now I've got to get back to bed. I'm going back up the chat. Let me catch up. Thank you, Sarah. Oh, no, see, Renee's charging you with looking after me.
I know. I want to whisk you off to bed.
Promises. Renee loves his notch. Okay. Since you have to. They might fix it. I don't know. I don't know how they could fix it. The bartender thing's not that bad. The bartender thing, I mean, this obviously presupposes you're using bartender. But if you are using bartender, there is that option that I discussed last week, which solves the problem entirely. Let's just switch over to here so you can see the solution to the problem. Right. Obviously, if I had loads of stuff in the bartender thing, it would go across here and it would potentially, the notch would be there. It would potentially knock this out. With bartender, you can click on it and the stuff would come up here and move along there. But bartender, you'll see mine appears below it and I much prefer it below it. And that is just one option in bartender. Use the bartender bar to show hidden items. So if I take that off and I click, these appear in here and this is when the problem starts. Or it does with the right hand side. Because I've got a lot more icons than that. That's just the basics. I've got a lot hidden. If I had all of my items showing, it would scoot over to here. So by putting a tick in the box and saying use the bartender bar to show them, they appear underneath and they're going to skip the notch. So that doesn't need an update or anything. That's just solved the problem. But the problem other people were showing was that they had an application. So maybe something like Scrivener, which isn't going to work too well here because I've got this lot. But almost, it's almost touching the middle. So if you had a couple more menu options, that would be catastrophic. Catastrophic. But I guess if you've already bought one, you're just going to have to learn to live with it, aren't you? Or as Renee says, learn to love it. You can't see anything but blue. Blue was my desktop, but you should have seen the stuff at the top. Bartender seems to have disappeared with Monty. No, bartender's still there. What you do have to do, you do have to go into it and set it up from scratch again and make sure that it's running automatically. Yeah, its automatic running got turned off. Quite a few things did. But it does work. There is an update. There's an update to a few of the other things. But nothing seemed catastrophic with Monty. Not in the usual way that things are catastrophic. There was lots of permission requests and all of that. But apart from that, yeah, it was copable. Which, you can't always say that, can you? I wonder what Renee's going to say when this... have you got any applications where the menu just carries on and on? One of the ones that was demonstrated was DaVinci Resolve, which I don't particularly use. I'm thinking Scrivener's one of the ones that's got lots of menu options. I think I'd be all right. But then it's going to depend on the resolution of the screen set to as well, isn't it? I just think it was an odd decision during the event. I said, no, I couldn't live with that. They've also made it that when you go full screen with a video, it doesn't use the extra space on the same line as the notch anyway. It just blacks the top of the screen out. So I'm with Kim. Why couldn't they just have done that? In fact, the more I see how Apple are trying to work around the criticisms they're getting about the size of the bezel on the old iMac, which I will admit, it must be easy, nearly an inch. It's big. But the more I see of how they're trying to work around that, this is a white bezel, we've put a notch on it. It's like, please, God, leave it alone. There's nothing wrong with the inch bezel, just leave it alone. But that's just me. Oh, Sarah's been completely brave here. You're just going to upgrade to Monty. And you've only just upgraded to Biggles. Well, I did the Biggles thing about a month ago. I've looked at Monty and thought, apart from the fact I know certain things will break, where there's just no support on Monty yet, you're looking at it, you can't tell the difference. One of the biggest things for me, which is that's nice, is the focus modes, which synchronise with your devices. The focus modes are nice. I'm not going to go full Monty until everything that I use is supported. That if I did that, I'd want locking up. So I won't be doing it yet, but I probably won't wait as long as I did for Biggles, which was 11 months. I won't wait that long. But no, it's not happening imminently. Plus the fact, my plan is that there'll be some kind of update to the iMacs and I might be tempted. But I'm now fearful. You see, instead of me looking forward to it now, all I can think is, oh my God, they're going to put a notch on the iMac. Oh, there's nothing ever. Gone are the days when you could just be excited and then be thrilled when they announce it. There's always something now. Before this event, when we thought, well, there might be an iMac, it was the bezel could be white. And now it's never mind the colour of the bezel, there could be a notch. It's awful. What you could do, Sarah, there is a site. Let's go get that site. It is called Roaring Apps, roaringapps.com. And I do believe, view macOS apps. Right. I'll put that in the chat. Right. What it does, it's a site that's got a database on it. That first link is the actual link to macOS. But if you just go to Roaring Apps, what it does is it tells you whether something is supported or not. Now, it's crowdsourced, so half of it could be hooey. I don't know. But it's the one I use. And then if there's something like people are installing Hindenburg on new M1 Macs, and it needs Rosetta 2 to run, and Rosetta 2 isn't installed by default. So there's all the instructions of what to do if available as well. Oh dear, have I checked my Adobe Acrobat DC files lately? Architect has also had an update. Bad words are being said. Oh dear. Oh no. I tend to use PDF Expert, but I did say to Mike I was a bit peeved with them. let me know what you think. I was convinced for years and years that I have been able to create a PDF in PDF Expert on iOS. And I went in to do it the other day, obviously, in bed, iPad. And it said, no, you've got to upgrade for this. That's going to cost you £50. I thought, pardon? I knew I had done it with PDF Expert, but I think when they introduced their premium subscription, there were things in it like you can edit the toolbar. And I'm like, I'm thrilled. Don't care. There were the things that they wanted you to pay £50 for weren't worth it. No way. But if you can't generate a PDF without the pro version, there isn't really much point, is there? And I'm not feeling the love to pay £50 just for that. But that could just be me. Renee is notch blind. You won't be when your menu's in behind it. Do you know, on a Windows machine, it wouldn't make a jot of difference? Because if you think about where the menu is attached to each window. So it wouldn't make a jot of difference with Windows. You could just move the window down. But no, I don't like the notch. I think it's a ridiculous thing to do with it. And I'm not going to change my mind. It was like people who said, when they said, we're taking all the ports away. And I was like, that's utterly ridiculous. I'm never going to agree with that. And I didn't, and I don't. And then they brought them back. Which was like saying, yeah, you know, that 5 years, we were totally wrong. Same with the MagSafe. So will it be that people loathe the notch to such an extent that they'll de-notch an upcoming one? Or is the notch there to stay? Who knows? Just be happy and get bartender. That won't solve your problem with the menu. But I think there are very few applications where the menu stretches that far, it would get to the middle. Certainly in full res. You'll just have to make do. When it takes you 20 minutes to access one of the menu options, Renee, you'll just have to say, yes, but to save that 20 minutes because it's that fast. I still don't like the notch. Not going to like the notch, I'm telling you. I'm not. But there you go. Let me have a look here. So it's affecting PDFs on the iPad as well. Oh, no. Oh, Kimmy's sure the next MacBook Pro will be without a notch. Ooh. You're going to miss Adobe DC. It's probably not worth paying for Adobe DC by itself because it's so expensive by comparison to the full suite. So, you know, if they... I wouldn't pay for one of the apps. I think you either want the suite or you don't. There are some other apps that are very good in terms of PDFs. I mean, there was a funny way that I was working where I ended up using a desktop app to create this PDF from my iPad, which admittedly would probably only work local. But then I can do a demo of that, can't I? How to live without Acrobat. Because I was marooned and was living without my iMac. Oh, no. You're hoping to bring the floppy disk back. Oh, well, absolutely. Oh, and the zip disks. Who remembers zip disks?
I do.
And the Jazz Drive.
We've got zip disks in the garage. We
do. I think you had the more modern one.
Yeah.
Mine had a SCSI interface, but I think Mike had the posh one, which was the USB one, which still works, I believe.
Mm.
Could you imagine it? Stop about the notch because you're going to cancel You're not going to cancel your order. I know you're not. I did hear that people who had put in orders for custom models and been told Christmas had been able to, they decided they'd go and have a look at the store and, the model they wanted was available. I don't know how, if it was custom, but apparently so. Kim says, every review I read, they all hate the notch. I'm never going to love the notch. I'm not. I know I'm not. Because I just think it's a horrible kludgy-fudgy workaround for a problem that doesn't exist. You know, if you want a camera, then you're going to have to accept that the design of the machine allows for the camera at the top. If the bezels are nothing at the side, then I don't see what the problem is if the bezel's a little bit bigger at the top. Plus the fact, the way you open a laptop, you're going to be putting your fingers all over the screen at the top, which if there was a bit of a bezel, then the fingerprints would be less. I don't know whether they'll admit they were wrong, but I think they should address the fact that menu items are disappearing behind it, that they hadn't already put in place some software-based mechanism for it to work with the notch. But you know what? All it means is they'll be selling Mac Minis like they've gone out of fashion. Because if there was a notch on the iMac, would I have an iMac? There's a thought. So I'd already said to Mike, I might have to start looking at more expensive monitors because I don't like spending money on monitors. It's a pet peeve. But I said I'd need a 4K monitor, which means I might as well have a look at one of those ultra-wides. While I'm at it. This could be expensive, but never mind. You've got 20 zip disks. Wow. Oh, I remember the SideQuest, but I didn't have one, unfortunately. No. I did have a tape thing. Do you remember that big hulking thing? Oh, it was massive. It was the size of a breeze block. And it backed up to tape.
I do.
And I got it cheap from this place that was like an outlet for catalogue items. And they really were cheap. You know, these things had like retailed for like £400 and they got them for £20. So I decided to give it a go. Oh, it took forever.
Is that the thing your Amiga was attached to?
No, this was much later. It was PC.
Oh.
And you were backing up your whole PC to a cassette, to a tape. Not cassette tape, but to a tape. Took forever. I mean, I look back and think, really, would you ever have recovered anything from that? Probably not. Probably not. The big curved ultrawide. Probably, Kim. My only concern with that, which I've said, is if I'm sharing my screen, I need to share all of it. I can't just share half of it. Can you imagine that you're presenting your slides? If you share your entire screen and it's an ultrawide, then the audience get like a huge black bar top and bottom, but they can see the slide. If you shared a part of it, then they'd only see part of the slide. Now, you have got that present to a window thing, which might work, but that is in Keynote, and now I'm in PowerPoint. So either I can have it eating my slides, or I can have it displayed in a window. So I'd really have to have a look at that. But what I find with this is, by all means, bring out hardware that's amazing and that is only intended for a certain job. But don't fiddle with core equipment that means I have to fiddle with established workflows to work around something that shouldn't be there, like the notch, or the fact that then I need a different monitor, and I'm thinking, well, I need a monitor that is 4K, and I need a monitor that's 16:9 ratio. It's making life more difficult, not easier. When I was first buying computers, basically, if you had the money, you could buy anything. And you know, it would be amazing. The most amazing setup you can imagine. And now it doesn't matter how much money you've got. They're not making one like that. So you've got to find a workaround. I don't like it. I don't think that's the way to go. And considering they introduced that the same day that they backtracked on absolutely everything else, it was like, look, Apple, do you know what? We're not going to like this, just like we didn't like all the last lot that you did. And you've just put those back, so can you just take the notch away? I don't see why it needs to be that big for a camera. I mean, you can put them the size of a pinhead. I don't think it needs it, but there you go. Oh, Peter's got a backup tape system, but you can't find a Windows 10 driver. That was the trouble with it. You know, you've got this hardware and then the software doesn't work. Oh, CorelDRAW. I used to love CorelDRAW. I loved it. I had it on Windows, but I never went onto the Mac with it. I know it was available for the Mac, and then they took it away, and then they brought it back. But it's stupid money. Oh, stupid. But I did enjoy it because it was one of those apps that it had so much interface, but what was in the interface, all of the extra toolbars, were just what you needed to work with. And I must admit, when I had to switch, what was available to switch to? There was Freehand and Illustrator. Freehand was great, but that was Macromedia and they got bought by Adobe. And that left Illustrator, and I am not an Illustrator fan. I can use it, but I do not enjoy it. So when Affinity Designer came out, it was like, oh, thank you. That's logical to me. There's a lot in Illustrator that's not logical. What's a cassette? Is it like an analog pen drive? Well, I meant a music cassette, the type you wound on with a pencil. One of those.
That snapped.
Didn't you have the repair kit that you bought from Tandy?
I think I did.
The repair kit from Tandy. Tandy is Radio Shack. Tandy doesn't exist anymore, sadly. But Tandy had this cassette repair kit, / cassette editing kit. And it was a metal block about 1 inch tall and about 3 to 4 inches wide. And it had strips cut out of it. It was like aluminium. There was one for a standard size cassette and there was a strip for a wider cassette. And you took the tape that had snapped and you lined it up in there, and it actually had a razor blade with it. I mean, we wouldn't be allowed to sell that these days. Had a razor blade with it with a cover on one end, and you kind of cut the rough ends out. And this whole kit included some tape that you could glue it together with. And yeah, I did do that. Oh, it was like Hindenburg, but the basic version.
And it worked at Tandy.
Oh no, Radio Shack's gone as well. I thought Radio Shack would carry on. Oh no. Oh, Deb had a chance to get the ultra-wide curve screen, but you rejected it, made me dizzy. I must admit, it isn't something that I've looked at and thought, oh, I absolutely need that. So it's something that I'd look at. I think for editing it would be amazing, but I think for everything else it would be an absolute pain. So, Paint Shop Pro, there's a blast from the past. I loved that. They added a feature and I thought, this is just to die for, and it was the organiser. Basically like the poor man's bridge. They had that before Adobe they built it into Photoshop as just a viewer, and then they hived it off to Bridge. But I just loved that. The fact that you could point that at a folder full of images and just read them, stunning. That was my favourite feature. But wasn't that supported by a company in Oxford, and they used to do courses on it? And then, like you're saying, Carell bought it, and I just get emails, new version. I'm like, this must be the 5th this year, and it's February. I don't like that with it, so I don't think I would ever use that again. Right, let's have a look. Kim misses Radio Shack. So do I. Yeah, the people in there were like when they used to have geniuses at Apple that knew what they were talking about. You could go in and ask for a number 14 widget, and they were there. And they might make a suggestion that was better, or, they'd inquire as to what the project was, and then they understood when you spoke back to them. One of my favourite shops. Loved it. Oh, it was Intertan, Canada. Oh no, I only remember Tandy, and the fact in the States it was Radio Shack. And I never understood why it was called Tandy here, because that doesn't actually mean anything, does it? And yet Radio Shack, all the branded stuff that was in there was Radio Shack. The catalogues were branded Radio Shack, so I don't know why they did the silly thing and renamed it. Doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So what have we got up this week? Is it a busy week or not? I've got no idea. I've got to catch up. I've got to catch up on Adobe Max. Wasn't even allowed to watch that, was I?
No.
So I've got to watch that first. And then I've got to try and sneak off to book club. I'll just make sure that Mike's asleep at that point. Mind you, I can book club in bed, can't I? As long as I don't do breakout rooms. That would be bad. Actually, do you know, I got a thing from somewhere that they're doing a range of Zoom sessions, and there's some instructions, and instructions in terms of this is how to use Zoom, and instructions on what's going to happen, so you're aware of what's going to happen. And the aware of what's going to happen said, make sure you're in a quiet room, make sure you've got a cabled internet. I thought that's really going to work on an iPad, but carry on. And make sure you're in front of a blank wall. And I read that twice because at first I thought it said black wall, and I was thinking why. But I'm just as curious as to why a blank wall. Obviously, so you don't distract other people.
Mm.
But not everybody has their computer situated in front of a blank wall.
No.
So what would you have me do? Rearrange the office?
Yes.
Yeah, they can go somewhere with that. Renee can't imagine Mike having that much power over me. Well, the thing is, Renee, many, many years ago, and I'm talking many years ago, before I was born, there was a spate of robberies where my mum and dad lived, and also where he worked. And the one where he worked, there was a lady lived in a house, and she lived on her own, and she was in her 80s. And these people broke in like 3 times. So the family decided, she wouldn't move out or go into a home. The family decided that they'd put locks on every internal door in the house. So you could break in the front, but you couldn't get out the front room. You could break in the kitchen, but you can't get out the kitchen. So they gave up in the end. So my dad thought it would be a good idea if he did the same when we moved into the house we moved into literally just before I was born. So he did. So every internal door had a lock on it. That was fun when they lost the key for the one that had after I'd been born, obviously, the one that had my, like the baby bag with all the food stuff in. Yeah, he ended up in hospital trying to break the door down, but that's a whole different story. So when we moved from that house to the village of the damned, and the doors were that flimsy, it wasn't worth putting these locks on. But when we moved here, he decided that these locks were coming out again on every room in the house. So we are ultra secure here. To even get to the hall from the garden, you'd have to get through 4 locked doors. So Mike has these keys, and there's a lock on every door. So as long as Mike has the keys, you could lock me in, couldn't you? Yeah, but you wouldn't try that, would you? No. Oh. There's a question. Does Mike want United to lose? So Ollie finally goes. Oh,
you never want your team to lose.
I don't think you do want your team to lose. And my opinion, being serious now, I'm not blaming Ollie. I'm blaming the team. I think there's too much player power. And I said that for years, didn't I? I said the week Moyes arrived, and Moyes wasn't my choice, I can assure you. But the week Moyes arrived, Wayne Rooney started sabre rattling. I want more money, I want more money. I said to Mike, don't let the door at your backside on the way out, Rooney. As soon as you've got a new manager, you should pull together. And I felt that was selfish on his part. So I'd have let him go. And what happened, he gave in to Rooney, and then the man had no respect from any of the players. I said when Mourinho was here that the players just didn't want to play for him. And apparently the other night, this must have been probably last Sunday, after the Liverpool match, Roy Keane was trending. And I thought, why is Roy Keane trending? So I had a look, and he had said before this match, not after, that there was too much player power and the players didn't play for Mourinho and they're not playing for Ollie. And I said to Mike, I can't remember the last time I agreed with Roy Keane, but I agree with Roy Keane. The players have too much power. These players are turning in performances that are just amazing one week, and the next week it's like, why don't we just play some grannies? Because they couldn't do any worse. I don't understand them. If I was playing for United, I'd want to win every match. I would break my neck to do that, but these players some of them can't be bothered. Oh dear. I don't think he'll go, because it's going to cost him a fortune. Yeah. And I'm not sure they want... Is it Conte?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that they want him anyway. I did suggest Roy Keane, because I'd love to see Roy Keane go in there and kick the players' backsides and show them what it means to play for the club and not play for themselves. But I can't see that happening either. He's too much his own man, and they won't like that. Who makes the decision these days?
Ed, I think.
I thought Ed was on his way out.
He is on his way out.
Then I wouldn't trust whoever he picked. So I don't think they're going to want Ed to make that decision either. But, another couple of matches where they get stuffed 5-0, and I got to agree with you that he's gone. He's gone. Vibes and no tactics. Yeah, they've not got a clue. The defence last week was shocking. As Mike was going, oh, there's another one. And I'm looking over his shoulder, because there's some matches you can see on 2 devices, isn't there? But that one spared me because you could only see it on 1 device. So I looked over his shoulder and I said, where's the defence? And it was like, oh, they're on holiday in Benidorm for a week, because they weren't on the pitch. And I actually said to you, didn't I, about 5 minutes to go, is Rashford playing? And then I said, no, hang on a minute, I'll qualify that. Is Rashford on the pitch? So he said, yeah. I said, well, I haven't heard his name all match. So did he touch the ball at all? Was he one of the ones that got booked?
I can't remember. I think so.
I've got to agree with that. Roy Keane won't be alone near Old Trafford as long as Sir Alex is on the board. The thing with Roy Keane is, and like I said, I don't agree with him often. He's too much of a hothead. But, he did say it as it was. And the thing is, I know he had a set to. In 1 minute, they were bosom buddies, weren't they? And then he had a set to with him. And I agree, but then I have to say, what if Roy Keane could do a job? Then the fact that Alex is on the board of directors, he's not doing what's right for the club. He isn't doing what's right for the club either. If you let a past grievance stand in the way where he would be the man for the job, then that's not right for the club. But that was what kicked it off originally, I think, wasn't it? Mm. Didn't Roy Keane point out the error of the horse?
Probably.
The error of the horse was that Alex Ferguson was gifted a horse by two people who owned a heck of a lot of shares in United. And when this horse retired, it went out to stud. And he wanted the money that this horse got from stud. But the horse was a gift while the horse was racing. So I said, why would you assume that you would be getting stud fees from it? And why wouldn't you just, that's been great, but, it's your horse. But no, he didn't. So he sued these two guys, who then decided they'd offload their shares, which ultimately led to the Glazers taking over. And everybody knows it, but nobody's got the brass balls to say so in front of Alex Ferguson, because that was when the trouble started with this horse. So... Oh, Renee's happy because it feels like marooned. Yes, the Rock of Gibraltar. I remember it well. But if he'd have just accepted, to me it's greedy. If somebody gifts you something, which is while this horse is racing, you are getting benefit from it. But when it came to the stud rights, it wasn't his horse, it was their horse. And then he sued them, and then that was the end of that. That had such repercussions, and I think Roy Keane pointed it out. And he hasn't spoken to him since. But to be honest, I pointed it out to Mike about 20 times. Oh, dear me. Such fun and games we've had, haven't we? Mm. Well, time will tell. I don't know with Ollie. I don't think he can survive many more 5-0s. And I don't know if he's... Like you said last week, I'm not giving up. But if players won't play for you, well, to me, I'd play him in the reserves. I would love to see Pogba in the reserves. Let's see how you cope with that. Just drop them. I actually went as far as saying the ladies are doing quite well. Is there actually any rule that we can't play the ladies? There probably is, but that's most unfortunate, because that's exactly what I would have done. I did see at Tandy, I do remember they did have some computers, but they were in the bigger branches only. And they were the one that I learnt to code on at college. It was a TRS-80. Big, hulking thing, DOS-based, green screen. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Would have loved one of those. The City match will make or break it. I think it will. And I think City are going to go into that on a complete high. And United probably not. And if the players don't want to play for Ollie, if they would rather have another manager, then that's the way to do it. But what I would do, because I'm like that, I'd sack the players. Because it's them that's on the pitch, making a complete town halls of it. But we'll see what happens. Tottenham tomorrow, won't we? Mm. Fingers crossed. Otherwise, you know what next week's slides will be before we even get there. Oh dear. Well, I'm not sure what I had planned for this week and how much of it I'll be able to do. Let's have a swift look. It's Grey Bin Day, so that's excitement, isn't it? It's actually quite a light week, isn't it? Apart from, we'd had a break from the football, but the football is on tomorrow, Tuesday and Saturday. So there could be more bad words said than in ever bad words history. Brilliant says, I think the players like him personally, it's just they realise he's tactically limited. Well, they have had some good wins. It's just that they can't get any consistency, can they? Starting with Pogba. He is the one. I mean, he had quite a lot to say about Mourinho, didn't he? And he's just carried on. I don't know why. Have I let him go? I don't know why we ever bought him back. Wasn't he the one that Ferguson let go because he was an arrogant so-and-so?
Yeah.
You can be arrogant if you're good, like Ronaldo. But Pogba, to me, no, never been that good. Never been that good at all. Just thinks he is. And when I remember him getting off the plane with his cool glasses on, thinking, I'm sorry, mate, but it's September in Manchester. Can you see where you're going? Or do you have a guide dog? He just looked a complete idiot, didn't he? Complete idiot. But we will see how it goes. Lucky wins individual brilliance rather than tactics. Well, I'm thinking that's possibly why he took Ronaldo on, because he can turn a game. But the thing with Ronaldo is, whatever else you say about him, and there's plenty that people say about him, he's dedicated to football, and you can tell that by looking at him. I could not believe there was a thing in the papers, and they had a picture of Ronaldo, probably the one where he whipped his shirt off, and it said, Ronaldo is 36. And I thought, well, yeah, he's looking good for 36. He's fit. And then there was another picture next to it, and it said, and this is Wayne Rooney. And I thought, yeah, I know, but that's not fair, because Wayne Rooney must be 45 if it's a day. Because obviously he started playing young, didn't he? So I lost track completely of how old Wayne Rooney was. Until it said the caption underneath, and this is Wayne Rooney, who looked like he'd eaten all the pies. Bald as a coot, and he said, this is Wayne Rooney and he's 35. And he'd already given up playing how many years, and I couldn't believe it. I said to Mike, if they got the numbers right here, Mike said, yep, that's right. So whatever you say about him, he has kept himself fit, and he is fit to play. A bit like the other one we had, Zlatan, until he damaged his leg. You know, he was older, and people were saying he's too old. You're not too old. It's like you're not too young if you're good enough. If you're good enough, it doesn't matter what age you are. But if you've eaten all the pies, it's probably not a good idea. So there you go. Back then, Edward Wood wanted a transfer model. That's what. Well, I still wouldn't have bought him. Not good. Not good. I wouldn't have brought him back no matter how good he was, because he's going to be a disruptive influence. A disruptive influence in terms of he's going to want what's best for him. You're going to hear about it if he's dropped. But he could be being dropped for a reason. No, he's not my kind of player. He's built differently, but also had a diet of beer and vodka. Well, Cristiano was with the one, wasn't he, who got rid of that bottle of whatever it was and replaced it with water. So there you go. Yeah. Hello, Simon! First in. Excellent. Oh, first computer for Carol was a Gateway. Was this a Gateway 2000? From
Time
Computers. That was my first PC. I had an Amiga until I think it was 94. Imagine we borrowed one from work, didn't we, when we wanted to? So every weekend, Mike would bring a computer home. There were a place in Blackburn, and they used to do them to order. But every month, in the magazines, they'd give you like a couple of models to choose from. And I remember, didn't we take the finance on that?
I think we probably did.
And we had to sort all the paperwork out for the finance and then head to the post office and send it off to them in a letter that was registered, so we knew it had been accepted. All this to get a computer. And it rocked up about 2 weeks later, didn't it? But it was amazing. It lasted a long, long time. Yeah, Gateway Computers. I think they had another name before that. And it could have been something to do with the fact they were in Blackburn. And they actually opened a store in the Trafford Centre after that. How on earth they were intending to pay for that, I don't know. Because the margin on computers must have been quite low. That shut down in the end, and I don't know what happened to the business. One from back then who has done well and is still going is Scan Computers. But I think they do it by not having like models available for sale. It's all on the web, and you choose what you want, and then they will build it for you, which is honestly the way I'd go. I know at some point I'm going to have to get another PC, and I know I could build it, but that's not the point. So I'd much rather choose the bits and pieces and tell them to put it together. Because, you know, if I get it back and it's got a problem, then it's their problem and not my problem. Which I got to a point, I think I built we had a rack, didn't we, with 12 in, and I'd built every one. Oh no, that's a different job. That's a system engineer job, looking after the tech, and I didn't want that. I wanted to be creating, so there you go. Ooh, and Graham's was a Dell 486. I think mine was a 486, but my first laptop, I didn't get my first laptop for quite a while. I think it was about 1999 before I got a laptop. Oh, Kim's Gateway needed a new motherboard every 4 to 5 months. That's not good. I remember we got one from a local store. Do you remember Maestro? We got it for music and video, hence Maestro. This thing never worked right from day one. And would they take any responsibility? Would they heck? Until I wrote the legal letter. And we took the computer back. I sellotaped this letter to the side and we left it. And they gave us a new machine in the end. Oh, a massive 20 meg hard drive. I think my first one had about 6. It wasn't that big. I think it was about 6. I did have 20. Now, I did have a 20 gig drive. I had a 20 gig drive eventually, but I don't think I even had a gig in that one. Oh no, we're talking meg, aren't we? It was ridiculous. Oh, now Deb's got a Gateway 25-inch monitor. It's 15 years old and works great. Wow. I do remember Dan computers, Graham. I never bought one, but I do remember the ads. Oh, wow.
I don't suppose many will understand, but if you look at that comment between Renee and Peter, the Yorkshireman sketch.
Yes, the Yorkshireman sketch. Who's heard of the Yorkshireman sketch? It's where each one tries to outdo the other by how bad their childhood was. You had 20 meg. I only had 10.
When I were a lad, we had 10 meg.
Well, when I got
10 meg. When I were a lad, we had a 5 1/4 inch floppy with half a meg.
Mine didn't have a hard drive. My Amiga did not have a hard drive. I worked with floppies on it. Oh, those were the days. Oh, right, we better head off, hadn't we?
We had.
Before I'm grounded again. I will endeavour to be ungrounded at some point this week. But it's looking a bit dicey at the moment. So fingers crossed, positive thoughts my way if you are of that ilk. That would be most appreciated. Because otherwise it'll be more Mike and Excel next week, won't it?
Yeah.
Getting a dirty look now. We will sort it out. We will do something. But I'm at the point now where I think I'm going to need some medication and some sleep. So I'm going to head off. Been great chatting with you. Do you know what I enjoyed tonight? That I could chat while you were talking. Yeah. So I was in the chat more than usual. Enjoyed that. Most fun. Thank you for all your very, very kind wishes. Much, much appreciated. And we will be back with you very soon. But for the moment, I'm going to say good night from me.
And good night from me.
And we will both see you next time. Stay safe, guys.